In the mid-1950s, the crofters of Torridon were anxious to get a road to Shieldaig because they said some of the finest scenery in Scotland was being neglected because of a gap right here. Anybody who came to Torridon had to turn back the way they came. If they came to Shieldaig, you had to turn back because of the Balgie Gap. No bridge was over this river. There was only a private road, unsuitable for motorists. Their agitations were so well rehearsed in some ways with the support of great figures like Eric Linklater, who compared the scenery here to the Vale of Kashmir or the Inland Sea of Japan, and yet motorists couldn't see it. In 1963, they got the road.
Before 1963, anybody come to Torridon, he had to come in by Kinlochew, and it's the only way out again for them. And to get to Shieldaig, which is 6 to 7 miles from here, we had to walk there. And it was only a bridle path.
What difference has it made then, the building of the road in '63, that made it so good?
Oh, it did. It opened out the country, this part of the country for us. We can get to Loch in about half an hour now, where it used to take us an hour and a half before.
I believe you had to drive 65 miles in order to cover that 67 miles before the road was built.
Yes, to get into Shieldaig. It's only 6 miles as the crow flies.
To make the road, 3 rivers had to be bridged and over 250,000 tons of earth and rock bulldozed to make an 11-foot wide highway, quite wide for this part of the world. And it was the first realisation of a 1950 white paper on Highland developments encouraging people to live in the Highlands. With the building of the road, the 65-mile detour was eliminated between Shieldaig and Torridon. But what about the people on this side, the people of Applecross? They had never had a road. All they had was a wall of death motorcycle track. And 1 year after that road was opened, Ross County Council proposed that the people should be evacuated rather than build them a road. When the proposed evacuation of Applecross became public news and reporters came in to cover the story, they discovered the only way in, apart from coming by boat, was this track, the motorcycle track, and some of them travelled on the pillion up this winding road. And by Jove, they were appalled. This motorcycle track was the only alternative to the boat that came once a week from Shieldaig. It was soon known as the Wall of Death track. I too reported the story, but preferred to walk and have time to talk to crofters along the way. And they were not slow to point out that Applecross was dotted with empty houses because of the neglect of the county to provide them with the ordinary facilities that people have a right to expect. They told the story of a decline from a population of 2,000 a century ago to the present slow death, which was about to become an execution. Their simple demand was for a road along the coast where the land is good and with good anchorages for boats. You know, in a road like this, it's great to be on your feet, especially as the locals tell me that they've never seen colour like this in the sea before. And they don't know whether it's due to 10 weeks of drought or whether to a growth of algae on the surface of the sea or just below. But it's an incredible colour, especially backed by these great gnarled bosses of Louisian gneiss, the oldest rock that we know of in Scotland. That's Ken Livingston, the prawn fisherman. He's probably been over at the end of Skye today catching prawns. Must try and catch him and hear how he's get on. Just in the bay. I just saw you at the sea. You were quite a long way off. Anything I can do? Pull an oar or something? Ah yes, what a rare day. Very pleased. Have you had a good day's fishing? I saw it was a gale that was forecast. Remember that? Okay. Okay. Aha. Oh, that's not bad. Is that a fairly good catch? This village had the distinction of retaining the last fishing boat on this north coast, and it was owned by the father of Ken Livingstone and Dickie, who had left the village in search of a better opportunity in life outside. But they were drawn back. Ken had gone to Aberdeen where he met his wife and had 3 of a family. Dickie had studied photography in Glasgow. Now they are back in Applecross with their own prawn fishing boat. It's a challenging life for a fisherman, but I wonder how Ken's wife Linda, who had been a nurse in Aberdeen, likes the secluded life here.
Oh, I quite like it now. I didn't at first, but I got used to it. The climate was the main...
Too much rain.
Yes, that's it.
And you're following in your father's footsteps, and yet there was that gap. How did that come about?
Well, after I left school, there wasn't much to do, not many jobs here, and I went to Aberdeen to work with the Marine Laboratory for a few years. And after about 5.5 years with them, I decided I'd have a go at fishing again. So I moved back over then, and we got another boat, different boat from the type my father had, a much smaller one, to fish for prawns rather than fish for herring and whitefish as he'd done. So I was married by this time, so we just, the whole family moved across. When Kenny got the boat, I joined in as well after having a couple of years in Glasgow, which is
That's
quite a
enough to make
sentence.
energy love Applecross, eh?
That's right, yes.
And how about the road? Did that influence you a bit, the building of that road that opened up the neighbourhood when it used to be a kind
Well,
of closed shop?
if the road hadn't been built, we wouldn't be here. We'd be probably in a slum in Glasgow still, or something like that. But definitely, it brought us back anyway, and a lot of others too, probably.
And I hear there's even a wee cooperative for fish farming between you and a few other folk, is that right?
That's right. Aye, there's a few of us who've been interested in it for quite a while, but it was too expensive for any one of us to start off on our own. So five of the local people got together, and this is the first year we've just started on a shoestring, but hopefully it'll work. We've got some help from the Highland Development. They've been very helpful in both the fishing and the fish farming. So if it wasn't for them, we probably wouldn't start fish farming either.
And is the fish farming basically a kind of safety valve in case the prawns go down at some time or another?
Yes, we're very dependent on the prawns. With the types of boats that we've got about here, there's very little else we can do. There's a short crab fishery in the autumn, but the rest of the time we're dependent on the prawns. And if the prawns, the pressure is on, so to speak, there's a lot of boats now, and when you're dependent on the one species, if anything happens to it, or if the market for that species collapses, then we're all out on a bit of a limb. So we feel the fish farming would be, an alternative, and in a way it fits in with fishing because in the winter and that we have a lot of days we're ashore, and we could be working on it then as well when the weather's bad and things.
Well, that's what I would call a very nice wee success story. The 2 boys who were born here have come back here. And it seems to me they're going to make a good go of it. What a setting too, with this little anchorage and this fine modern house. He built it large because he hopes for a good future, and I hope he's going to have it too. What makes Loch Torridon to me the most picturesque of all the Scottish lochs are its innumerable bays carved from the ancient rocks. Upper Loch Torridon is the name given to the stretch between the village of Shieldaig on one side and Inveralligan on the other, with some of the finest mountains in Scotland dominating the shores. The loch bed was dug out of the solid rock by the great glaciers which met and bulldozed everything in their path, the loch being narrowest where the moving mass of ice met the most opposition. This explains the number of natural harbours for boats, which enabled the folk to fish the sea as well as croft the land. And in the days before roads, they were no more isolated than other folk in the Highlands. But with the coming of roads and railways, they were left out and saved, thankfully, just in time. So the dream of the crofters for a road from Shieldaig, which their fathers had pleaded for, was realised when their population was down to 55, and how right they were to stick it out. Immediately it was built, there were over 350 applications for empty houses. But even the incomers who bought and renovated empty crofts could not have foreseen that a new technology in naval warfare would lead to a continuation all the way south to Applecross, where I go next.